5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Welcome back to Lessons and Blessings. You know who it is. Or you actually might not know who it is.
Maybe not.
If you do know who it is, it's your boy Shell. If you don't know who it is, now you know who it is.
Yeah.
It's your boy Shell, joined by the illustrious, incredible, awesome
3.
If he was a Twix, he'd be a right Twix.
Oh my gosh. Controversy.
You would think you heard the Carmen saying, what would you do for a Klondike bar?
Don't do that.
What would a Klondike bar do for him?
Yeah, it's AJ. It's good to be here. Man, we're back. Black History Month.
Woo!
We're feeling a certain kind of energy already. A disclaimer, if you will, today. Most of the time, my lovely wife has some meal prepared for us, but it's been a crazy week, and so I just ran with Sheldon to go get some Chick-fil-A before we ate, and I think that we're, pre-blessed food, and I think that if you hear weird things, it's because we're trying not to burp in the mic. But,
Facts.
Fast food be doing that sometimes.
Facts.
And I know Sheldon's feeling, he's got a little energy about him tonight.
I feel froggy.
Unpredictable, I'd say.
Unhinged.
Well, you know what? Here, we'll start with this. I think a lot of times we try to go straight into something, but how has your week been? At this point, we're in the middle of February, so we've done this for about 6 times or something like that, which is great.
We're actually doing what we set out to do.
I know. Huge.
Shout out to you, brother.
We're doing it. Shout out to us.
Shout out to God.
That's right. God did.
God, who did?
God did.
Hey, holla at us.
So how's your week been so far?
Man, this week, honestly, bro, has been really steady. It's been really well. It's been really good. Like I was telling y'all at dinner, on Monday, I got the best sleep I've ever gotten in my life.
Ever.
This tops any sleeping experience I ever had. Just to be frank with y'all, my BC days. Actually, this was
my BC.
Actually, no, this was this is after I had gave my life to Christ, and I was going through some stuff,
fresh out of hell.
And I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna do some edibles, and I did. And now I'll be honest with you, that was the best thing I've ever gotten to that point. But on Monday, when I woke up, it felt like Jesus was holding me like a little baby. I did not want to leave that bed ever. I'm like, man, I gotta go to work. This is ghetto. I can't do this.
Work, bro.
And I was mad, but I legit, my body has never been that relaxed, that comfortable in the bed ever. I felt my blood rushing through every vein. It was crazy. That's what I would say.
So then, in your opinion, Jesus gives better rest than edibles?
Absolutely, 100%.
Wow.
Edibles don't last. That?
Oh, this is going to go into a different pod real quick about edibles. It will never fulfill. Anyway.
It won't. But yeah, man, the rest of the week's been good, man. I just think the Lord's been leading me in a lot of, he's really showing me how to work, what it looks like to actually do things that honor him and do the way I do things so they can honor him. Like how it says in Colossians that whatever we do, whether in deed or in word, I do it for the glory of God.
Yeah.
And I was really reflecting over the last year of being at this new job. What the last job kind of really showed me was I had a terrible work ethic. I got let go. I mean, I was happy that I got let go.
Right.
Which is weird. That's another conversation for another day. But the truth in that is the only reason I did get let go because my work ethic sucked. Nobody talks about the post college blues and being a retired college athlete and all those different things and missing all the college things, and now you're in the workforce. Nobody really talks about that transition. Quite frankly, I wasn't ready to handle that pressure. I wasn't ready to handle that paycheck. I wasn't ready to handle the responsibilities that came with that. And so now that I'm in a place that was semi-familiar before, but it's still new territory, right now I'm learning how to actually work well, but also be diligent, be on the schedule, and learning how to rest within the week. I don't have to wait till the weekend to find rest.
Right, to catch up. Yeah.
Right. And so honestly, bro, this week has been very fruitful. I mean, with conversations with a lot of friends and honestly, I feel like at this point, God's starting to bring disciples to me. It's weird, man.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting time, and we'll get into that later. But man,
it's good.
Week has been solid, bro. What about you?
That's dope. It's been good. I mean, I think even as we were talking about earlier, just kind of being excited that we're still doing this. and not that I think that we would have like abandoned ship by now or anything, but everybody, especially at 26, like it's hard. It's hard to make commitments and to follow through. Like those are difficult things to do. And so I think in the same way you're talking about, I think consistency, even when it's boring, right, has still been like a great thing for me in the past couple of weeks about like, hey, we're just going to put the work in every day. We're going to put the work in every other Friday to record, you know, and have a good time about it, all the while still doing all the other stuff that we do. Right. But yeah, it's been good. We just started our small group again, which is very exciting. You know, I had somebody reach out and they had mentioned like before the night happened, they were just like, dude, I'm just really excited to not have to be a leader and I can just go and get poured into, you know? And I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm excited to get back to one of the things that I think Whitney and I are the best at, which is having people in our home and really loving and challenging and encouraging and growing alongside of people. And so I think that was a really beautiful moment last night, just to start. And obviously we're in a small apartment, but I mean, this one's for free. If you're not generous with the small things, you ain't going to be generous with the big things, you know? So I think I'm going to be different with the 2-story house if I ain't doing it with the 3rd-story apartment. Come on, somebody.
I wish I had an organ start playing.
Eventually, you're going to get another one.
I'm going to get that soundboard. It's going to be a real soundboard. You'll be like, oh my gosh, how many sounds does this man
a little
have,
gospel
bro?
lick.
Right.
But yeah, man, it's been good. It's been good. I think like you're talking about, there's a transition where it stops becoming like boring. And not that there still aren't days where you're just like, dang, I'm doing the same thing today. But there's, I think, the reward of knowing you're putting in work and you're building something, which has been great, you know? But I know we were kind of talking a little bit earlier about, we've got a list of a bunch of different podcast ideas and stuff that we kind of throw around every now and then.
To be exact.
A lot. And keep sending more of them. You know, if you guys have anything you want to hear us talk about, send them our way. But I texted you earlier and I was like, hey, what are you thinking about the podcast tonight?
Right. And I was like, man, I'll be honest with you, bro. This whole week, when I thought about the pod, nothing. I looked at that list. I was like, man, nothing is jumping out to me at all. Like nothing. It was when I was thinking, you know what? Maybe we just turn on the mic and just start talking and see what happens. Yeah. And so, but after I sent that text, AJ was like, oh, that's perfect because I've been thinking about this. Like, all right, let's do it. Yeah. And so that's a good transition. Yeah. You were going to talk about Friends. Yeah.
How
many of us have friends?
Stop. So we talked about it even before, I think, here and there. But, you know, Sean and I are both 26. And friendships are much different at 26 than they were at 18.
Facts.
And 16.
Facts.
And all those kind of things as you go back. And they continue to evolve. I remember growing up, one of the weirdest things to me was that I never saw any of my parents' friends come over, really. Like every now and then they might host another couple or something like that. But they talk about some friends when we used to live in Nebraska that they used to hang out with a lot. But, you know, I grew up most of my life here in Texas after we moved.
Amen.
Yeah, I guess. Sure. but I always thought it was a little bit odd growing up. And some of that is because you don't know what it's like to be an adult where you have kids in a house. You know, sometimes you just got to be there all the time and have your eyes on them. And then you realize that your friends with kids also have to do that as well. But I always found it a little bit odd. And I was like, oh, dude, I don't want to become somebody that, it sounds weird, only has my family every day. Right. You know, just because I think, not that it's not an awesome honor to have a family and to be able to do life with them. But I feel like there's so much that God wants to give us and how we connect with other people too, that I didn't want to miss it. And so I think I've always had these expectations that like, I'm going to prioritize friendships and I'm going to fight for them and stuff. And at 26, I can say there are friendships that have lasted way longer than I ever thought they would. And they've changed over time, and friendships that have ended way quicker than I thought they would, that I thought were going to be forever, you know? And so at this age, I've dealt with, you know, crushing disappointment and heartbreak, and people who you might connect with very deeply, but because of their stage of life, because of things that are going on with them, or maybe you misstepped and did something wrong, you know, like brokenness exists. And so I think I'd kind of been left in this space for the past couple of years of, do friends naturally change? Like, does your expectation, maybe my parents felt the same way I did when they were younger, but then life changes and it gets difficult and it's hard, you know, because we're coming from first, 12 years or so in a school system where you're put with, at least where I grew up, like 30 other people in your class, Right. And so you get to know a bunch of people. You've got a clique of friends and stuff like that. In high school, you're in all the same classes. You're in a building together. Then you go to college. You kind of had that. I went for a year, but you're with people. And then all of a sudden, now there's no guarantee anybody's going to reach out to you. There's no guarantee any of these friendships are going to last because it was kind of built on the fact that you saw each other every day.
Yeah, proximity friends.
Right. And I didn't quite know how to tell the difference. And sometimes I still don't, to be honest. But I feel like it makes it very difficult for me to like place the right priority and emphasis. It's something that I mentioned maybe to you before or to a couple people when I talk about my past experience with the church I was at. I look back and I'm like, dude, I invested in a lot of friendships that were, and friendships with quotes on them that were proximity.
Right.
Like it was just because they were people around me and they wanted my time. I don't think that's inherently an evil thing, but I look back and I'm like, dude, I don't think I invested quite as much into the things that I wanted to last. They got out of priority. But I mean, what about you at 26 now? How do you think friendships for you have changed from maybe what you thought they were or what they look like when you were 18 or younger to now?
Yeah, I mean, the mindset that I have now is definitely evolved, I think, for two factors. One, I think general maturity as an adult. Yeah. And also on top of that, the spiritual maturity as well. Because a question that we're going to get into, like what qualities that you look for in a friend, that has definitely changed as I went from before following Christ to after following Christ, and what did I want to look like? What does that look like for me? And I would say my mindset that I take with my friends is I know that everybody is here for a season. Some seasons are longer than others. Some seasons are really quick. Some seasons last a lifetime. Yeah. And so my mindset going in is that regardless of what season I play in your life, regardless of what season you play in my life, I'm going to give the best that I can for you. Yeah. Because my mindset is I want everything for you. I don't want anything from you. And so we both take that mindset. Then if the day comes where we just naturally kind of part ways, then it doesn't feel like, oh man, I can't believe my homie left me, or I can't believe sisters left me like that, or left me out to dry or something like that. That burp you're talking about, there it is. There it is. But this one's some water though, because I'm doing a 75 hard drinking out of water. It's like right there, but it won't come out. Yeah. There it is. Hold on. Excuse me, y'all.
Praise God.
Glory.
He did.
But I think it's one of those things where, I mean, when I was younger, most of my friends only kept people around who could do something for me.
Oh, okay.
Okay. If I saw you were only able to benefit me, then I was willing to put in work with you. But now I don't care if you can benefit me or not. If we connect, we connect. It is what it is. And when I take that approach and allow the Spirit to guide me in your life, and I was going to get a little spoiler, like the number one thing that I look for in friends are, do you hear from God? Like if you're not hearing from God, I mean, that's a different conversation. If you're not hearing from God, are you a Christian? Are you not a Christian? If you are a Christian, I hear from God, like, okay, what do we need to do to help you get there? Because I don't want just anybody speaking in my life. I don't want anybody having that access to my life so they can maybe find a way to uproot me. I don't know. Yeah. Like, I don't know who's my enemies, and I don't even know if I have enemies. I'm sure I do, but I don't pay attention if I do. But in that regard, it's, for me, like for example, Pedro. Yeah. One of our things that we talked about right when we became friends was like, hey, we don't know if this is going to be just a season or it's going to be a lifetime thing. But until the curtain call, we're going to just treat this thing like it's forever. If it's not, no hard feelings, man. Like, God got you, God got me. Thank you for the time that we had, if that's what it leads to. But I think it takes two mature people to be able to have that type of mentality of like, okay, if this does not last forever, then thank you for the time that we had. Yeah. Because I think God will take care of us, and He sends people in the right seasons for what we need in that season, and He will send you also in the right direction to people who need what you have as well. And so what I'm looking for, I mean, when I think about how I do friendships, right, I want to have a nice range of friends. Like, I want friends that's younger than me, I want friends that are my age, and I also want friends that's older than me. Because granted, yes, I can learn from the people that are under me, but usually those are people who are learning from you. Sure. People who are around your age are the people you probably do life closest with, because y'all are usually in the same
season.
In the same season, you can walk a different way, and you have people that's older than you, so that you can glean information from and learn from them, the mistakes they've been in and the things that they want to teach you and all those things, but they also can learn from you having a different perspective. So it's just like I see like a 3-level approach to that. But I mean, when it comes to friends, man, like I don't really trip on it, because I mean, I'm personally, I can make a friend with anybody. Like I can go to Walmart and be like, hey man, you want to be friends? I mean, guys were just simple like that, but I just know how to connect with people in such a way to where, like you were saying, you don't know who are your friends by proximity. Like for me, it's really easy to tell, we're just proximity friends. Like you don't text me, you don't call me, you only hit me, like we're only buddy when we're in the same environment.
Yeah,
that's a telltale sign for me. But also sometimes people don't know that expectation is, me being a good friend is not being like overly involved. That's something I had to work through, because me, like literally, like this is 6 months ago, where I'm like, okay, well at a certain point in time, I'm just gonna pull back. I'm gonna let you do your thing, and then when you need me again, then I'll be here. And so that's kind of how I look at friends. Like I definitely think they're immensely important. Like you can't do life alone. You can't do life without a group of people to help you traverse it and to hold you accountable and hold your back and stuff. But I mean, I'll leave it there. Yeah.
No, that's great. I mean, I think one of the things that we're really going to hit on today is that God's design for community isn't always your expectation of friendship.
Fact.
And that's a very difficult thing to do, and for a multitude of different reasons. Like we can't just pretend that the way that we look at friends, who are some of the most dynamic and influential relationships we have on earth, isn't influenced by past hurt, different things like that, right. Church stuff, whatever it is that people have gone through. Like I know that the way that I looked at friends, I think I tried to replace family with deep friendships. And because I think that my family always felt so just emotionally, I didn't feel like there was enough room for me too. And some of that was, things that had happened. Other than that is just how I had kind of decided I was going to live my life. And so I think for me, I crave like depth.
Yeah, retweet.
I crave friendships that I'm like, I don't even need a bunch of people. Whereas I think I grew accustomed to ministry and things like that, where I have a lot of people that think I'm cool or want to hang out or want to talk to me. But I didn't really feel like I had those kind of really deep friendships at the time as well, like where I didn't have to be those other things that I was to those other people. And I think to your point, that doesn't mean those other people shouldn't be in your life.
Right.
But I think that we have to rightly see God's plan for what friends are. And I would also say as a caveat that I think God has a plan for your seasons of loneliness too.
Facts.
Where you don't have great friends. I think this is something that I've been reading the book, or I started reading it last year, like early in the year, and I put it down for a little bit because I was really struggling with my wife and I, who had dealt with some what felt like to us betrayal of friendships and things like that. We just really felt like we couldn't figure out what was like a right expectation to have for our friends.
Right.
And how long should we kind of have these unfulfilling friendships when we want more and we're willing to put in the work, but that doesn't guarantee the other people are. But he has so many quotes just about the fact that we need community for the way that God designed it. But oftentimes that comes at the expense of our expectations dying of what we think that they are. A lot of times we kind of go into friendships now and Christian community now, and we try to build community that we want to be a part of instead of what I think you're hitting on, which is these people are around me for a reason because I need them. And I think that we feel somewhat entitled sometimes to great friendships and deep friendships instead of one of the points that, and it's Life Together by Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who's an unbelievable author. But we think that we're entitled to have deep and blessed friendships in our life. But I don't think that there's a verse that you can show me that is a guarantee that in every season of your life you're going to have the relationships that you want to have.
Facts.
Instead, his point was we should be grateful and like profusively so about how God has been gracious to us in those seasons and being thankful for the times that we did have those friends, instead of confusing it for the norm and confusing it for what your promised in every season.
Right.
And that's what's been difficult for me with friends, is understanding the times that I have had really deep friendships. And when those deep friendships come to an end, I think my knee-jerk reaction is, how can I make sure that never happens again, and I don't ruin something again? And a lot of times it's not even that I ruined it. It's that maybe I was trying to hold on to it, and it was trying to go. It was time to go.
Right.
But the point being now, instead of looking at it like I need to create the friendships around me that I need and I want and what I feel entitled to, it's like, oh, maybe I do have what I need. And maybe I'm not as grateful for what God did when he didn't have to. But you'd mentioned a couple things. I think you mentioned, somebody that hears from God, and then people in different seasons of their life. But is there any other things that you would tell somebody, hey, if I'm looking for good friends out there, no matter the age, and maybe you can apply it to other things if you want, but what are other kind of characteristics that you would encourage people to look for?
The two big ones, something that we talk about all the time is honesty and accountability.
Yeah, that's good.
But I would just say honesty with the caveat of a deeper level that is vulnerability. Because I think anybody can be honest, right? But everybody is not built to be vulnerable. Because the level of vulnerability that you have can equal the amount of pain or the amount of betrayal that can come from that.
Yeah, sure.
Also, the level of vulnerability you have can also leave more space for the amount of love you receive. So it's like, how do I balance this dichotomy of? It's
good.
Like, how do I manage these things? I'm talking away from the mic again. I'm trying to work on that. I hear my voice echoing, but that's why I think it's really important to be able to hear from the Lord, because like if we're hearing from the Lord, we should be first honest and vulnerable with him first before I'm honest and vulnerable with people. I'm not saying you don't do that with friends, but I should be comfortable doing that with the Lord and then doing that also with my friends. And so when I can be honest, open, and vulnerable with these people, then I know that anything that I tell them, like I can probably tell AJ anything. He's not gonna be like, bro, like, don't talk to me with that. I don't want to hear that. He's like, I know he's not gonna do that. Yeah, like, it's like if you need help, go ask somebody else. He doesn't have that. He doesn't have that mentality. He's like, oh, okay, let's talk about it. Let's work through it.
Yeah, we're here.
And so when it comes to the accountability piece, a lot of times we think accountability is just like, oh, I have somebody that's checking up on me every now and then. But accountability should be uncomfortable, not for the person who needs accountability, but for also the person that's holding you accountable as well. Because, for example, if I'm asking AJ to hold me accountable because I'm dealing with, sexual sin, right? Yeah. I shouldn't only hit him up after the fact. I should hit him up before, because that's uncomfortable. Like, bro, I've been feeling tempted. Yeah. I've been feeling these thoughts. I've been gonna lie. I've been putting myself in crappy situations. Like, hey, come pray with me, bro. Come put a lock on my phone. Like, we do that. Yeah. And stuff like that. So I'm just like, yo, like, this is what you need. Like, people who, like you said this in the marriage pod. I think this applies also to friends as well. You said in the marriage pod, if you're trying to be with somebody who is not willing to put in the work with you, it's not gonna work. Yeah. And I think you can take a good chunk of that to friendships as well, like especially the deep ones, because if they're not willing to put in work, because they surface level all day, which comes from proximity, right? And so with the deep friendships, am I willing to put in the work and grind with you? Am I willing to go and actually walk with you? I mean, if you look at David and Jonathan, I don't think that the fact that they just so happened to meet each other and all of a sudden their souls went together. Yeah. Right? I mean, granted, they had a lot of different similarities, especially when it comes to conquest and battle. They were both great at what they did. Granted, obviously, David was anointed to be king, and Jonathan knew that. And because of those two different things, like, one, David was incredibly humble at the time. Jonathan was incredibly humble at the time. They connected, and all of a sudden, it's like, whoa, hold up. Did I feel a spark? Yeah. What is this? Yeah. And then they made a covenant to be like in each other's lives that way. And so when it comes to that thing, it's for me, I mean, it really comes from a discernment thing, bro. Like I don't have any other way to explain it, like the discernment thing, because I'm not gonna be mad when somebody chooses to walk out of my life, because if, like you said, expectations is a big thing. I was listening to a pod today by Preston Morrison, Leader's Cut. Shout out. If you don't listen to Leader's Cut, you need to listen to that. Like, I listen to that every single one of the episodes.
Turn this one off and go
listen to it. I'm not even lying. Like, do it. Like, I'm not even joking. But this dude,
it's good.
This guy here. But he's talking about how almost a lot of our pains in life come from expectation.
100%.
And the second you have expectation, you open yourself up to pain and disappointment and resentment and all these different emotions. And so I'm not saying don't have expectations for your friends, because you should, because there are boundaries that should be had or talked about for sure. But in that expectation, is my expectation realistic? Is my expectation expressed? Because a lot of it is unexpressed expectation. And so, not trying to go to sidetrack too far, but I feel myself deviating from the question. But like that honesty and vulnerability piece is huge for me, brother. I'm right there with you. Like I yearn for deep friendship, because I got time. Like, man, I'm tired of all these surface level friends. And then you're not gonna find random deep friendships. And one, it takes time. You got to build it. But you first have to be honest and vulnerable, because once you do it, oh, I can do that too. And you just go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper.
That's really good.
So,
Yeah, I think too. I'll go ahead with one as well. But on that piece, I think the way that I describe it is the difference between being transparent and vulnerable. To me, those are different things. And we can use those terms kind of interchangeably. But the way that I think about it is like, transparency is that I live in a glass house and you can see through. Vulnerability is I'm going to let you in and you can come sit on the couch. Right. And you can come interact with the things that are in my house. In the same way, in friendship, there's a certain vulnerability like you're talking about that's like, I'm not just going to share with you what's going on. I'm going to let you interact with my pain. Right. And I'm trusting you in that. And that's a big thing for me. I would say too about the David and Jonathan piece is that is like one of the best pictures of friendship that we get in all of scripture. Facts. And it ends. Which always, it still bugs me. Like that's one of the stories in the Bible that I'm like, God, I don't like that it ends this way, because they go their separate ways and we don't ever see them together again. And that's not, we don't know what happens because of what's not written, but there is that sense that I'm like, dude, this was his brother. And then that's that piece of, but David was grateful and Jonathan was grateful that they had each other for the time that they needed each other. And then they took that with them the rest of their life. I am not somebody that's like, God, I want my Jonathan so that then you can take him away later. That's difficult for me. Right. I would say, but to the question, I think you want to look for somebody that has good self-awareness.
That's huge. Yeah.
I think it goes along kind of hand in hand with that honesty and transparency and vulnerability piece. But I think like self-awareness to me usually impacts somebody's ability to communicate about things and talk about their expectations. Like it's one thing when you've got a proximity friend, we'll call them, right? Where it's like, oh, they don't even realize how that sounded or what they said. But I think when you have somebody that's self-aware enough, I think you have somebody that's willing to do the work, like you said. I think that comes from a place of understanding. When you are self-aware and I'm self-aware, that means I can, like, without ego say, hey, there are things that you're great at that I'm not great at and I want to learn from you and get better at. But also that means we can actually have that depth of conversation. I don't have to spend time potentially trying to convince you of something that's true about you, even though you don't want to acknowledge it or that you can't even see it in yourself. Because I've had friendships like that where it's like, oh, we can't have a deep relationship because we're on different levels of maturity and awareness, right? Where I'm looking at myself and calling out these things and you don't even think there's things wrong with you, you know? So there's a certain level of awareness that I think's like, for those deep friendships that we all crave, I think you have to look for people that know themselves, right? Because I think the maturity piece is when we have a self-aware relationship and a friendship, I can come to you after I've messed up or I've done something or I said something that was kind of off the rails, out of bounds, over the line. I could say, hey, that was wrong, for one. I can own that, but then I can usually come with and here's why I think it happened and here's what I know about myself and maybe I felt this way. It's the same thing with Whitney and I in our relationship, right? It's not just, hey, I'm sorry, but there's a sharing that goes on of awareness to say, hey, I think when you said this, it made me feel this way and that made me think about when I was a kid and this happened. Right. You know, there's a certain awareness that I think just brings a new life and energy and depth to relationship that says like, I know myself and I'm bringing that to the conversation, I'm not just like an only outwards looking person. I also look inside. That to me is huge.
Right.
What do you think? You got any other ones?
I'm about to say, just like gave y'all like an example. Like, I mean, this is early on when me and AJ kind of started. I wouldn't say, honestly, I don't know how we became friends. I think, genuinely though, it was proximity.
It was, yeah.
It was proximity, and obviously he's a natural born leader. I'm a natural born leader, so we bound across paths eventually.
Yeah.
And we kind of formed this inner circle group that we haven't met in a while. We need some accountability with that.
That's right.
So hit us up in our DMs. Say, y'all need to meet.
Yeah, like, get together.
Yeah, let us know. But I remember there's this one time we were still getting to know who he was, and we had a meeting. One of our meetings, and he was saying a whole bunch of stuff. I didn't agree with nothing he was saying. I was like, bro, this dude is full of himself. Like, what is he talking about? Like, come on, bro. Like, lay it down. You know what I'm saying?
Read the room.
And I sat on it for probably like a month and a half. And after that, granted, I didn't like just make that judgment. Okay, well, and write him off. That this is who he is. Granted, I knew it was too early to make an assumption like that because, like I said, I didn't know him that well. And as we got to know him, I got to say, oh, that is not his character. Because it's even funny that I don't know if you remember this, but after you said those things you said, like, we met again, and you're like, yeah, sometimes I, like, portray, because I don't want people not to know I'm not that guy. Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah, yeah.
And when you said that, I was like, oh, it makes sense why he said this and this, because we didn't know him that well, right? And then I remember one day, randomly, I got some conviction. And the Lord was like, hey, you need to forgive this person, you need to forgive this person, and you need to call them and tell them this thing. I was like, I don't want to call these people. Why'd I do that? And it was crazy. It was two people. Like, one of them was my absolute best friend in Kansas. I told him about something. And he was like, bro, honestly, I didn't even need to know that, but I just appreciate you telling me that. Just having the gall and the courage and the, like you said, you hear from the Lord to tell me these things. Like,
yeah.
Genuinely, I didn't. He said, genuinely, I don't care.
Right.
But I appreciate the fact that you can do that.
But it matters to me that you did it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then I told the same thing to you. He was like, honestly, bro, like he said, that did more for me than even you realized, because like you said, you had a lot of pain from people making preconceived judgments about you and not sticking around long enough to see if they're true or not.
Yeah.
And he said, you just thank me for staying around. Like, oh, okay, you see that this is not true. Now you know you get to know who I am. Now you know who I am. Like, I appreciate that. Now I know that I can trust you. Like you said, I was like, whoa, okay, like that's some weight to it.
Yeah, it's huge.
And so, man,
it's huge.
Yeah, so I'm just like, so what do you think is the biggest hurdle when it comes to not like making the friends? I think I can only speak for guys. I just know it's so not easy for us to make a friend.
Yeah, we see somebody 3 times in a row, and we're like, oh, we're
best
tight.
friends. Like, it is what it is. But what do you think the biggest pitfall when it comes to, like you said, discerning? Okay, who is a deeper friend versus not? Because I know you mentioned like you struggle with trying to figure out who is what. So like, what do you think for you is like that? Where's the gap in?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's going to depend from person to person. Mm-hmm. Because I think going back to what you said about when you called me, I think that we're all old enough to know like some of the greatest things about us, our greatest strengths, also come with the greatest weaknesses that we have. And so for me, I say it all the time. I've got strong opinions about everything. Mm-hmm. And because I have such strong opinions, a lot of people assume that I haven't put the work in or have the experience to know what I'm talking about when I have an opinion. But also I know I form thoughts and opinions about things constantly, you know? And so for me, there is that level of, it's my passion that makes me an asset. And it's my intensity that makes me an asset, because I know like, I just made a joke about it earlier, but like I've never known somebody to be my friend and like brush shoulders with me and not figure out how to speak for themselves. Like it is like one of my missions is as part of like an Enneagram 8, which is the challenger, is people who don't know how to speak for themselves. Like if you're my friend, I am like drilling you about like, you have to go tell them how it made you feel, all that kind of stuff. But when it's out of balance, this is the weird thing, I don't even think it's like, when it's like a good and bad thing. It just means that sometimes the intensity reads a different way, like, but the deepest relationships that I have had I had a young adult pastor, and he was like a mentor of mine, and still is, and one of my closest friends, just seeing me through so many different seasons of my life. And I remember I was just leaving for college, and he had taken over the college ministry. Yeah. And I cared about the people there so much, and I loved them so much that I sat down and had a conversation with him. And I was like, hey, what are your plans for this ministry? Like, I had to feel like they were going to be in good hands. Mm-hmm. Now, the error of that is that I think that's my responsibility. It's not, right? That's not my job. Now, 18-year-old AJ had to learn that and figure that out. Mm-hmm. But I remember getting a text from him years later, and we had a great relationship anyway. But as he spent more time with me, he was like, initially that conversation really put me off. But then I realized who you are and where it came from. Mm-hmm. And it was the passion that you had for this that initially, like, it was almost too much. Like, and I don't think he had used the words like it scared him or anything like that, but it was off-putting, just so passionate. But then he was like, but that's also why I have you on my team, and why when I need something done, I come to you, because I know that you're going to do it, and I can trust you. But it's that, like, looking past, I think, the faults that we all have and being willing to still step towards somebody is huge. But to answer your question about kind of knowing the difference between who's here and who's not here, honestly, I don't know sometimes. Right. And I think that this is part of being a Christian in some ways. Like, one of the verses that we love to quote, but we hate when it's quoted to us, is that the Lord doesn't despise small beginnings, and we shouldn't either. Right. That's great when you're telling somebody else, like, oh, God's going to come through. He's going to blow it up. He's going to do whatever he needs to do. But when you're the person in that chair and you're like, but he ain't going to do nothing with this. I've had plenty of friendships, like I said at the beginning, that turned into depth that I would have never predicted. Like, I've got a friend now that's one of my best friends. And we met in like maybe our junior year, sophomore year of high school, just later on, at a camp. And he brought in, and we, for a Christian camp, we had like rec games and stuff like that during the day, and then services and stuff. And so he came on in total like jock vibe, total, man, we're going to win all these games. Like, this dude doesn't know what's about to happen to him, because you're going to play the games and then you're going to get wrecked at night by this message, And we joke about it all the time. He's like, man, I didn't think you liked me. And I was like, well, I didn't dislike you. Right. But I was just like, we're not going to mesh. Like, I'm going to have fun, and I'm competitive, and I like that. But you're clearly not on the same level when we look at what we're expecting for this week, and what kind of expectations we're bringing. Flash forward all these years. I mean, he's just put so much work into not just growing himself and continuing to grow, but he's never, to me, I think one of the difficult things, being the personality that I am, is that a lot of people read my passion and they are, one, intimidated by it, or they're just oppositional to it, right? So it's either I'm scared of him, which has happened. Like, people are like, dude, I was just very intimidated by you because the way you speak so confidently about things, I just didn't know what to do with that. And then people who kind of like, I think that machismo, like, well, I'm going to show him, then it becomes conflict. But he always allowed me to be a person. And he held space for me to be a human being, even though, he'll tell you, he's like, yeah, but I still defer to you in certain areas. Like, when we're talking about theological things, I'm coming to ask you what you think about them. But also a dude that I could just hang out with. I think for me, some of the deepest friendships are the people that I can sit on a couch and laugh with and not do anything. And then people that I can also have really deep conversations when it's needed. I think some people, in my opinion, go a little bit too extreme on both of those. Like, if you're only ever just hanging out and laughing, there's no depth. And that's okay. Like, I've got friends that I just go and I have a good time with, like my fun friends. And that sounds weird to say, but they're just guys I play games with. I play FIFA with them, that kind of stuff. And it doesn't mean that there's not depth there, but it just means when I'm hanging out with them that I'm looking for fun. I just need a little bit of that. And obviously I still love and care for them deeply, and we try to hang out more and stuff like that. But then there are friendships that I know right now are set apart for like, I mean, you and I, we have that level of, we can switch from ha 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 to, hey, we need to talk about this right now, and I'm going to bring up things I don't want to bring up to other people. Right. So for me, I think it's a kind of level of, you find out over time I think. And I think that if you're constantly the one that's like pushing and you're pushing and you're pushing and it's just not being reciprocated, I think you need to move on, right?
Yeah, that's a big thing.
Because like if it's supposed to happen, it's going to happen.
Right.
But I would rather than look, here's the tough thing. The person that's reciprocating it might not be the person you want to be reciprocating it. And some maturity is you realizing that friendship, what I think that friendship will be, my expectation of that person might not be what I want, but it might be what I need.
Right.
And because of that, the Lord has humbled me in so many ways and been like, no. You think you know what you need. Here's what you need. Yeah. Right? So, yeah, I think it's a balance of you don't know until you do in a lot of ways, which seems like a cop-out answer. But I think you know whenever you can share a depth with somebody. And typically this is something we talk about in ministry whenever I'm talking to somebody about how to maybe introduce the gospel, because I don't want us just like, beat people with the Bible and be like, you need to know Jesus. I'm like, I don't know your name, dude. And what I tell leaders when I'm like, hey, if you don't know how to strike up a conversation, it's 3 steps for me. It's you need to have a surface level conversation, a serious conversation, and then a spiritual conversation. So one of those is, hey, dude, what kind of music are you into? Right? Like surface level. Oh, what do you do for work? Great. Then we move into, hey, man, like what's going on in your life? Like, maybe talking about some hurts, talking about some pains, opening up about things. And then that spiritual aspect, and typically this is usually about evangelism, but then saying, hey man, I need to share this with you. In that same way, I think that there are people that you can go through that process with and they'll stop at one of those levels. And that's okay, right? Some people aren't ready for it. But I think that there's a level where you have to put in the work to find out. And then if it's not reciprocated, then it's like, okay, that's okay. Right. I'm still going to have you around for what you're supposed to be in my life. I think you have to be willing to let go of what you think they can be and just see them for who they are right now. And if God does something, great. And if he doesn't, I just don't want us to get to a point where we're like, okay, well, Sheldon, like if I came to you and I was like, you have to do all these things in order to be one of my best friends. This is a weird thing at 26.
You can be like, about what? No.
Like, what are you talking about?
Right. Take me for real, man.
Exactly. I don't know. Like, I think you just have to kind of, the last piece I'll say about it is sometimes we crave depth in relationship because we're not actually going to God for depth.
Yeah.
And so you put people in a position
that they're not supposed to be.
That they're never supposed to be in. So I think that God won't give you friendships that you're not able to steward well. Or should I say, he's not going to give you the depth of friendship until you can steward it well.
Right.
And because of that, I'm like, well, maybe if I know that I've been actually like walking with the Lord and hearing from him, I'm going to see the things he puts in my life. Right. Maybe that's going to look like a friend or not, No,
I think that's a lot of good stuff, man. I mean, as soon as you said that, the last piece about like the stewarding thing and all that, the first thing that popped into mind, like seek ye first the kingdom of God and all these things will be added to you. I mean, I will stand by this 10 toes down every single time. Like if you are not connected with God, you're not going to truly connect with other people. And it's like it's a cheap knockoff. It's like a shortcut. And I'm not saying that God cannot use people to bring you back to him, because he does it all the time. He did it with me. I'm sure he did it with you. And people who listen can say, oh, but I have this friend who kind of brought me back. I mean, there are verses that talk about you got a brother that has sinned, like that him who restores him, like God's like, yeah, I'm gonna give you reward for that, for restoring him. Like,
that's my guy. Yeah.
And so I think there's a question that I think a lot of people don't like to answer, because it sounds, I don't think pretentious is the right word, but it sounds conceited. It's the idea of outgrowing people. A lot of times, if you really just pay attention and allow course to run its life, you will outgrow numerous people, and numerous people will outgrow you. And I think it's an ebb and flow of life. You can see it in every aspect of life. In nature, with plants, there's overgrowth, there's undergrowth. The stuff that's not there, granted, that's a little bit different, because are you close to the light or you're not? You get roots involved.
Another sermon.
We're not gonna give y'all a whole science lesson right now. But when it comes to outgrowing people or people outgrowing you, what have you seen be the most difficult part of like you realize, wait, I'm outgrowing this person, and where I'm going, you can't come with me. Or dang, I see this person is doing this, I can't go with them there.
Yeah.
Or you might not know where they're going, but you just know that I wish we had a camera right now because I move my hands, but it's like the scene in Fast 5, like You Never See Me Again.
Right.
Like they're driving next thing you know, and it's a split in the road, and they go out in the distance and you never see each other again. It's like how do you handle those transitions when it's you outgrowing someone or when you realize somebody's outgrowing you?
Yeah. Both of them poorly. Now, I say that because I don't think I've had to do them since the last ones that I handled very poorly. Now, the first thing, it's a great question because I think that is one of the weaknesses of modern day Christian community is I don't think we know how to have the conversation.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't know if I could trust myself to go to somebody and explain to them, like, obviously in the grand scheme of things, it would be better to just have that conversation so that nobody feels like you just got cut out of my life, you know, like, but I've never really seen it modeled well. Like I've never seen a situation that I can think of right now where somebody goes to one of their closest friends and they're like, hey, we're not going to be close friends anymore. And then that was it. And it went great. You know, like I think there's a lot of ego that's involved, especially in Christian community, because then you start throwing on like some spiritual levels that never should have been there, but you're just reading everything through a new lens. So I can say specifically, back to the piece of me using friends maybe to get what I didn't get from my family, I kind of set up this expectation that these people are going to be here forever. And so I didn't ever think outgrowing. I thought we'll just grow together. And I didn't realize at the time that people make their own decisions. Right. And you can't make them for them, even if you know what's best for them. Right. Like they have to make the decision themselves. And I think as well, like, the difficulty, I guess we should break them up in both things. If I have outgrown someone or outgrowing someone, I think in the past you just stop talking. Right. Like eventually you just stop reaching out, you just stop doing all that kind of stuff and whatever. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I haven't talked to this guy in a couple years. And then maybe there's a little bit of shame there where you're like, well, I can't reach out now, you know, all that kind of stuff. But I think in ministry and being as involved in churches as I have been over the past, decade or so, sometimes people leaving the church means they're leaving your friendship and you just don't know it. Right? Because you have that depth of friendship, but only while they're a part of the same body, and then politics happen and all that kind of stuff. And so sometimes they're like natural events that I think you're like, oh, okay, well, I just don't see you anymore. So I get it. I get that we're kind of transitioning to a different season now. But as far as if I've outgrown someone, I feel like I just kind of isolate myself away from them a little bit more. Right? Because I don't quite know. And like I said, these things that I'm thinking about, the times I've done this were like high school, So I don't know how many times I've had to do it more recently. But there's just like especially when people want something from me, a level that I know I'm not going to. I think now that I think about it more, the way that I've explained it on the front end, because I think clear expectations is a great way to start, was explaining to people, hey, I don't have the time for you. And that's a hard thing to say. Right. That's a difficult conversation to have. Thanks. But like, I have to really dig my heels in where God is asking me to dig my heels in. And that's with these things right now. And just because you haven't done anything wrong to me, like I don't hate you, but in order to do the things God has called me to do, I just don't have time for this anymore. Sometimes that is a cop-out if you're not saying what you actually need to say. Right. I think other times there's a level of, sometimes you have to kind of sit down and have that conversation if they continue to reach out and they're like, well, why don't we hang out as much? And then I think the conversation should go. And what I try to do is just, hey, I just think we're starting to go different ways. Right. I think we're starting to branch off like you're talking about. And at some level too, it can feel harsh, but I think there's some honesty of, I am really digging in and trying to grow. as an individual and as a person, and here's where I think God is taking me. And I think you can still speak life in this moment as well. I think you can say, and here's where I see God taking you and what you're doing, right? Like, I think that you're on this path, which to me, I want us both to be fully where God is asking us to be. And I think we have to be okay to knowing that it's not here anymore for right now. And it could be later and it could not be. I think I'm way worse with the other one because I feel slighted. I feel like, what do you mean you outgrew me? Because I start looking and I'm like, when? Like, me? You know, outgrow me. I stay growing, you know, like I'm fighting to continue to be better. So I think maybe because we don't know actually how to have those conversations, my natural defense is like, oh, you're trying to say you've left me behind. And then my head immediately goes to like, in what way? You know, like, what are you talking about? Like, I think this is one of the weirdest dynamics for me to figure out, because a lot of the friends that I made in ministry over time started as somebody that really looked up to me. And then they kind of transitioned to a peer that kind of stood next to me. But in my head, that perceived jump is like, well, they've grown a lot and I've stood still. That's not always true. But there's a law of getting good at things, right? It's called the law of diminishing returns. If I don't know how to play the guitar and I start learning, I'm going to improve at a much quicker pace because of how much I don't know than somebody who is going from like seasoned to master. Like, there are small tweaks that they have to make, and it's difficult to master those kinds of things. But the perceived change is from nothing to okay at something is much bigger and much quicker. So I used to think, oh, that means I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. Right? But I think more recently in my life, I think there has to be a level of grace that you give people. And knowing, even if you think you have all the right words, somebody's feeling is going to get hurt. Unless God lets you both know and you guys magically have that conversation at the same time, you guys are saying those same words at the same time, then somebody is going to feel slighted, or somebody's going to, or not even slighted, but they're going to be sad, right? They're going to be sad. But I think that there is a level where you can communicate, I'm not kicking you out of my life forever. I will always be here. And I know sometimes that's a cliche and it's trivial, but when I say that, I mean that. Like, if something goes on and you need me, call me. You know, like, I'm not just going to stop caring about you right now, but I'm being taken in this different direction or this new season, and I don't think you're going to the same place. And I think if I focus so much on this relationship and building this, it means I'm holding on to a season that God's trying to take me out of. Right. And that's disobedience. It's no longer even about you. Right. It's about me having to be obedient. However, the soapbox here is that if you look at how people have misused and abused those sentences when we're talking about, like, typically relationships in the church, well, God told me that we're not supposed to be together anymore. Did he?
Or did he have to tell you to get together in the first place?
Yeah, are you too cowardly to say that it's you? And you just want to put God's name on it? Because the number one hit, right? And I get heated about it because I've seen it mess people up, and I've done it. So, like, I'm not like free from this. Right. And I never tried to do it intentionally, but, you know, looking back on it, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're an idiot, right? Like, if you can't stand on what you're saying and how you feel, and so you hide behind saying God did something, you're going to make God seem like a liar really quick. Right. The point being, this line of, like, I don't know, God's just telling me I'm not supposed to be with anybody, and then a month later you're with somebody else, you know, or 2 months later you're with somebody else. And it's like, oh, okay, so did God tell you you're not supposed to be with anybody, or did God tell you you're not supposed to be with me specifically, or did you just not want to be with me anymore? Because, like, we just try to sprinkle the Jesus on it and be like, well, you know, God wanted me to do that. Argue what God said. And, you know, we just want to be obedient and all that kind of stuff. And that's garbage. And it really is. Like, and there's a learning curve, especially in high school, when you're trying to figure out what's me and what's God and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, you have to, like, stand on what you say. And you can't try to sugarcoat it, and you can't try to beat around the bush. If I think that our season of friendship is ending, I have to be able to communicate even maybe the discomfort that I feel about it. Like, I don't want to do this. In some of those situations, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go a different way. I want you to be with me. But I think we're starting to pull each other away from the things we're supposed to do. And ultimately, at that point, I have to be faithful to what God is telling me to do. And I've got to make sure I'm being honest and not cruel. And then I've got to trust God with them.
Fact.
Because the most difficult thing of those moments is that they might be mad at you for a long time. They might not even forgive you.
Right.
But that's not me anymore. That's not my job. My job was to do what I was supposed to do. And I'm not supposed to make it harder on them. Like, I'm not supposed to go and be like, hey, here are the 10 reasons why you're not a great person and we're leaving, you know? But for some people, it's going to be, hey, I want to start surrounding myself with people that are more ambitious, people that are going to drive me and be more accountable. And to be honest, I just feel like you're in a different season of life and you're not looking for that right now. And that doesn't mean you're worse than me. It just means here's what I'm looking for. And now I'm going to go that way. Still love you. I'm still going to be here for you. But that's the thing. They might be mad at you, and it also might be the thing that God uses to get them going.
Right.
But then that means, guess what? They're mad at you. I mean, what about you? When you think of both of those things, and is that something you think is easier for you maybe? Or do you think that it's kind of one of those things that, like I just said, it's going to be difficult, messy anyway? Or do you have some like actual wisdom and encouragement about how to maybe do that better?
I want to start with quoting Ecclesiastes, where it says there's a time for everything. I'm not about to go through that list. That list is very extensive, and I don't have it memorized, so I'm not about to try to rip it off.
Yeah, make up scripture. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I'm not doing it today.
Not today.
Glad you got that. And so, since there's a time for everything, I understand that everything is on the timeline. Everything's on the timetable. Everything's on God's clock. And like you said, there are some things that God wanted me to be away from, or not wanted me to be away from. He was pulling me in a different direction. But I sensed that direction. I didn't like where it was going. And so first and foremost, I think it stems from, like you said, the disobedience, but me and my pride wanting to keep control and keep things that are familiar, keep things that are comfortable, and not have to have a new beginning. Because like you said in the beginning, like God does not despise small beginnings. And a lot of times our life is full of new beginnings. Over and over, new mercy every day, new beginning, new beginning. Every day I wake up, it's a new beginning, right? And so if I'm taking this right perspective, I think it's a perspective thing, because I had a friendship in college, it was my best friend in college, and we really bonded. It was almost like a trauma bond, if I'm being honest with you. And we just clicked, and we did everything together. Like, I'm talking about the good, the bad, the ugly. We did everything together. Like, we were inseparable. Yeah. If I was not somewhere, it's like, hey, where's Sheldon at? Or if I wasn't with him, he was like, hey, if I'm not with him, he's like, where Ryan at? Like, where he at? And there came a point to where he was still a student, and I was transitioning into a faculty role at my school because I was a tennis coach. And so that obviously created a shift that had there's natural boundaries that came with the position. And then this was a time where I was really trying to do things like rightly with my faith. Yeah. And at the time I didn't have anybody else around to really hold me accountable and to push me and to help me go through scripture and all those different things. Right. And so I found myself in a very difficult place of like, man, like I really want to go hang out with my friends. I really like to go, just to bar and have a drink. I'm not talking about getting drunk and all this stuff. Yeah, just having a drink. But because I'm faculty, I can't do that, right? And on top of that, now I see that I'm going in a different direction. You are going in a different direction. How do I manage this? And so we actually had to have that talk, because in the beginning, like you said, the natural thing is just to pull away, and I do my thing, you do your thing, we never talk about it. Yeah, that's like the number one. I think the number one thing that we all do. If I avoid it and don't talk about it, the problem is gone.
They'll get the message,
right? And so we did that for a while, and then eventually I can't remember how what the timeline in between that was, but it came a point to where I had to address it. Like, bro, like these are the things that are why we aren't close anymore. Yeah. One, I'm faculty. I mean, I'm not about to be at the bar with y'all like that. Granted, yes, they understand that you're my friends and we're the same age and we came into college at the same time and all these different things. Like, everybody knew who we were and all these different things, but there are new responsibilities that come with that. Yeah. And new boundaries I have to put up. Do I want to? No, but I have to put up. The second one is it's like, hey, like this is what I'm trying to do, like spiritually, and you're just not going there. Like having had a conversation, like you said, it's very weird and to say it, but like you said, it's an opportunity to speak truth and to speak life and encouragement in that same conversation.
Yeah,
it's like where like I think I literally said is where I'm going is we're just not going in the same direction. I'm not saying that you can't come with me, but you're not doing the things necessary to come with me. So I say the opportunity is there for you.
Yeah.
If you want to go where I'm going, bro, like you need to do. Like you need to press into the word. You need to connect in with God, and then we can work on it together. But if you're not willing to do that, then I can't surround myself like with the things that you were partaking in at the time and all these other people and stuff. Because I mean, our environment matters so much to our spiritual development. Because if I'm about to go on a tangent. Because I just felt it pop up.
It's a whole other podcast.
I felt it pop up like with the problem with the discipleship model in the Western church is terrible.
Bruh.
We get all these converts and you say good luck. Happy life because you're with Jesus. Everything's good and dandy. Sunshines and rainbows.
Yeah,
butterflies and fairies.
Led by another new convert.
Right. I'm just like, the second that you turn these people loose, the enemy's gonna have a field day with them.
Yeah.
He's going to pull them back into their old sin. And they're going to think, I am not a Christian. I am not worthy. I'm not going to do this. What's the point of doing this? This is hard. But there's no discipleship and there is no biblical teaching about the words that Jesus has spoken. It's like, hey, you will have trials and tribulations. The world will hate you. Why? Because they first hated me first.
Yeah.
If you're going to be resurrected with me in glory, you also have to die with me as well.
Right.
And that is the piece that a lot of people do not understand until years later sometimes. And if we get a better discipleship model, I think we'll get a better friendship model as well, because we learn how to actually walk with people and to let people like turn them loose, right? Like I think I'll let you use a very cool illustration of like some of your deep friendships now started with people who looked up to you and eventually they caught up.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's one of those things where when it comes to using our gifts, if I'm using my gift to bring people up, I know I have a gift of wisdom. Like people tell me this all the time. People say, "Hey, I want the wisdom that you have." But I'm like, one, it's accessible to anybody. You just got to be willing to do what wisdom requires, because wisdom ain't free.
Yeah,
like, it comes at a cost. Like, what are you willing to do? I can show you what I did scripturally in prayer life and all these different things. Like if you follow the word, it literally tells you right here. If you do these things, He will give you the wisdom that you're looking for. It might not look like how I do it, because I think it's unique to how God has made me. But in that, we train people up to send them out. Right? If I am, say, for example, if I'm trying to train somebody, let's look at the Eastern rabbi model, right? If I take a Jewish boy who was wanting to be a rabbi, then allow him to come apprenticeship under me, at a certain point, he should be at a place where he's ready to go and become a rabbi and have his own disciples.
Right.
I don't want to make you a disciple and keep you here forever. That's not a disservice to you.
Really
That's
good.
also not a disservice. It's a disservice to me.
Yeah.
And if I'm keeping you here so long to where you can't go out and use the gifts that God has given you, then I'm being selfish. I'm being possessive, and I'm not turning loose what God never told me to keep for that long in the first place.
Yeah,
right?
It's good.
And so when it comes to the fact of when I feel that I'm outgrowing somebody, I'll be honest with you. There's sometimes that conversation does not need to be had every single time.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people know that, especially when it comes to surface level friendships, if we're just going a different way, I don't even say, hey, bro, like, man, I just hate that we're going in separate ways. Like, I don't think that's necessary. Because I think we come in contact with so many people. You know, people ebb and flow. We meet new people here. We meet new people there. And some people come in. Some people come out. Like I said, everything has its season. There's a time to plant. There's a time to harvest. There's a time to eat. There's a time to restart. All these different things. So when it comes to people, like, if I'm allowing the Spirit to lead me and guide me in every aspect of my life, why would I not expect Him to lead me and guide me into people's lives and to guide me out of people's lives?
Yeah.
Why would I expect Him to do the same thing for them, for me?
Yeah.
Right. So when it's those things where people, I wouldn't say necessarily, I've never been told like, hey, I'm outgrowing you per se.
Same. Yeah.
But I have seen people naturally go away, and quite frankly, I don't get mad at that, because my expectation for any friend is, if you are doing what you're supposed to do spiritually and you're going a different direction, why would I be mad at that?
Yeah.
Like, granted, yes, you might miss the fun days and the amount of times you talk to these people and there's the connection points and those things, because that's how our brain works. Our brain works on patterns. It seeks those things to fill those voids, right? But if I understand that God's going to take care of me regardless of what season I'm in, who's in my life and who's not, the ebb and flow is just natural. It's going to be like that until the end of time. Like, I mean, people will come in, people will come out. Same way coming to the world. People will be born, people will die. I mean, I can't hold on to things so much to where I'm so possessive to the point to where I'm not willing to let anything go. If I'm not willing to let anything go, then I'm not willing to grow. Yeah. And so, with that being said, like managing when I have to outgrow somebody, I have outgrown somebody, I always leave with the opportunity for them, hey, this is where I'm going, and I'm not stopping. Yeah. Do you want to come with me? Yeah. Sometimes they say yes, hop on the train and hop off. That was your decision.
Yeah. Tried it, I don't want to.
Mm-hmm. Or some people are like, know what, man? I see that, I respect that, but that's not me. Yeah. Boom. But you say you gotta have that conversation and be able to communicate that well. And it comes, obviously, it'll come from a lot of mishandling. Yeah. That where you learn how to handle it well.
That's a great point, man. I think what I thought was, while you were saying that, like, I think that you have to ask the question in the first place, am I outgrowing this person? Right. Right. Because I think if you, like, for instance, one of the friendships that I knew, we kind of just went our separate ways, and I just never expected us to. Mm-hmm. We just started having like a lot, not even fights, but like, things just didn't feel the same. They just weren't natural, right? Where like we had time for each other before, and now it was a struggle. And then we had, there's a different kind of energy around it a little bit, where they were like, oh man, it's aggravating to me that they're doing this, and why are they starting to act this way, or those kinds of things. And I think because I expected it to be there forever, my mind just jumps into, hey, let's just schedule it, let's just hang out, let's just do this, instead of asking, hey, is this coming to an end? Right? And I think that had I had asked those questions at that time, and I would have been able to then even bring it up, like, I think even a great way to start that conversation is to ask, like, right, hey, I've been feeling this. What do you think about us? Like, do you think that we're heading the same way, or have you felt a pull too? Because we're not talking, I think high school, you have a little bit more volatile relationships anyway, because everybody is hormonal and trying to figure everything out and that kind of stuff. But if we're talking about really deep friendships that I think they really call for a kind of conversation to be had. Like you said, surface level ones don't always need it, but one that really should be had, I think that sometimes they'll know as well. And you can have a conversation about, hey, what do you feel about this? What do you think about our friendship and that kind of stuff? And just start a dialogue about it. But ultimately, I think I instead just felt hurt that we just weren't what we used to be. And I just kept trying to cling to it and try to make it happen instead of maybe being like, oh man, maybe this is where we're going to split ways. And I think had that had happened, the end might have looked a lot more like, hey man, I just want to take this opportunity to say how grateful I am for you and who you've been in my life. Instead of maybe something becoming fiery that never had to be. And I think it's a beautiful thing to get right the next time. And it really sucked when it happened, because I was like, dude, I just never expected us to go out like this, because of how close we were and all the time that we spent together and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of that might have been on my inability to steward that conversation to begin with, even in my own heart, to be like, oh man, is God asking me to let you go? And am I holding you back? And that's a tough question to ask, but I think you have to ask it. I think one of the things that come to my head, the picture is like, and honestly with young adults, whether it's friendships, the church, relationships, we want to be Goldilocks. Like, we want to go walk into a bed that's already made for us. We don't want to make our own bed. And I don't mean to say that we're in charge of like creating our own friends, but we are in charge of putting the work in to make relationships good. Facts. And deep. Like, they're not just going to show up. Yeah, it's a two-way street. You have to put the work in, especially if it's going to be there for a long time. But we kind of have this expectation, like, well, I'm going to go to the church that's going to fit me, and I'm going to go make friends that fit me. And it's like, fam, you're going to be looking the rest of your life, because it's not, that's a word, hold up. You shouldn't be looking for what places fit you. You need to be looking where you fit in. The point is not, oh, we all got to look the same. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, go where there's space for you. right? Like, go, and you might not even like everybody in that space, but they got room for you. So you don't know what it's going to be. You don't know how it's going to turn out. Go and give it a shot. Don't just expect that you're going to walk into a relationship one day or a friendship and it's going to have a perfect cutout for you to fit in. Very seldomly in my life have I walked into a moment and been like, this is perfect. Right? In fact, I can't really think of many of them. But instead, if I come with an open heart and an open mind of, hey, but I can work with this, or God wants to do this work in and through me, instead of this entitlement of like, well, I'm just going to keep window shopping until I see what I want to be a part of. It's like, oh, well, you're overlooking all the things God wants to use anyway. Because in the Bible, how many times God takes your expectation of how he's going to work and chooses to do it through someone you wouldn't guess, with something you wouldn't guess? I mean, all throughout the Old Testament, right? He's going to use the foolish things to shame the strong, and they're the wise, I mean, and the weak to shame the strong. And so I think that if we first have to just say, God, am I willing to do the work of friendship?
Right.
Am I in a place where I can have a deep relationship and steward that well? And then secondly, am I expecting some of this work to be done for me? And have I overlooked the people that you've put in my life right now? But I don't know. I think that would be a great place to start whenever you start feeling some of those tensions, whether it's that a season is coming to an end with a friendship, or you're looking for friends. Like we started the podcast talking about. It's like, just start the conversation with God. God, am I overlooking? Am I not seeing what you're seeing right now? Because I wouldn't have a lot of really close friendships in my life had it have gone how I thought it was going to go. But I don't know. I just, maybe be less of a Goldilocks. Maybe make your own porridge, fam.
And that's the thing. Like, I mean, I think a lot of times, I mean, like I said, God has, just looking at my own life, God has put the right people in my life at the right time every single time. And I can attest that he's also put me in other people's life at the right place at the right time, for a time, right? I think a good problem that I don't think a lot of people are not willing to admit is that they make friends are an idol. They make friends an idol. People are not willing to admit that. Yeah. And the reason, number one, a telltale sign when people are making friends an idol is when all of a sudden, the friend group is not inviting you to things anymore, and all of a sudden you feeling left out and all this thing, and now you losing it completely. That's not all. I would say that part of that is a human experience of like feeling left and abandoned for sure. But if you're not having the right perspective of, there's probably a reason why this is happening. Yeah. Either they are the problem or I'm the problem. Or third option, God removed you so he can have time with you. You're being pruned. Yes. Being pruned, you've been hidden, you've been present. Whatever words you want to use, however you want to use that. He needs to work on your heart in a certain way. He's been trying to get your attention for a long time, probably. And he's like, well, I'm going to use something that's going to bring you back to me. Yeah. I'm going to remove this. I'm going to remove this. Right. You can't hear my voice over the voice of your friends right now. And you see it a lot of times. And the voice of your friends, the voice of your job, the voice of your whatever. He does not compete. And God, he does not compete. He's like, I will do anything and use anything to get you to where I need you to be. Because why? 1, I'm God. 2, I've made everything. And 3, I do what I want. But not that I just do what I want. I do what's best for you, because why? I know you, I made you, I know what you need. We said this a while ago. A lot of times we think we know what we need. Yeah. But when I pray for God to do something, and I try to guess, okay, how is he gonna do it? It's never remotely close how he actually does it. If you can think of it ain't it, dog. Right. Because if I could think of it, I wouldn't have had to ask him for it. I would have to ask him for it. Yeah. And so when it comes to like friends, man, like if whoever's hearing this, if friends are your idol, I ask you to put that on an altar and ask God, are my friends my idol? Am I making my friends my God? Because if you are running a very risky, dangerous game. There's so many things that come by that. It's like the idea of like, if you live by the compliment, you die by the compliment too. If you live by a friend group, you will die by a friend group. It's the exact same thing. So this is why you need to, first and foremost, like I mentioned this earlier, being honest and open with God. You need to have a friendship with God. Like I'm getting so animated right now. You need to have a friendship with God to where the point to where you know him, you know how he's feeling, you know what he wants for you, you know his expectations, and you have that communication with him. So when God brings the people in your life, you have not only the capacity to love them and to care for them, but also you have the capacity to receive the same thing that God has sent for them to give to you as well. And so I don't know where I was going with that, but
okay,
I'm just speaking. I have to speak from personal experience. This is what God has shown me. And like I said, I'm very grateful for the people he has in my life. Like the people that he's allowed to speak in my life has helped me through some like very, very like tough and dark times. And in his last 2 years, legit, like you were one of those people that we talked about that, like navigating like, emotional stuff. Like that stuff was foreign to me. Like I don't know what these emotional things. I don't know what this psychological stuff is. Like what are you talking about, bro? This is not me. I can call. I remember, bro. I remember this one time you called out a quality trait in me. And I literally, as soon as I heard it, I rejected it immediately. I'm like, bro, just do this. I know what he's talking about. He does not know me. And the craziest part was, once I started to open myself up to it and look into it, I'm like, bro, he was right.
Dead on.
And if I would have listened back then, 6 months now, I would not be in the situation that I'm in now.
Sure.
And that's the crazy thing. I was just like, bro, that's so stupid. Why am I like this?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it was my own pride.
Yeah.
It was my own pride. I want to do what I want. I want to do what Sheldon wanted. And AJ had no say because he's not me.
Right.
He's not God, but God tried to use him. I didn't hear it.
Yeah, I don't need anybody else.
But if I'm communing with God, I know God's voice. I know what God sounds like. I know what it sounds like when he's speaking to me. I know what it sounds like when he's suggesting things to me. I know what it sounds like when he's like, hey, you should pay attention to this. Hey, maybe you shouldn't do that. I know his voice. I know what it's like because guess what? We're friends. Friends communicate with each other. Friends spend time with each other. Friends have good times with each other. Friends have bad times with each other. Friends go through the thick and thin and the mud and the dirt and the rain and dance and all these things.
Yep.
Because it's all encompassing. We do those things. But the one friend that will never leave you is Jesus Christ. He will never leave you. He'll never forsake you. And he's gonna keep you. And he's gonna he's shaping you to be more like him.
Yep.
And then the beautiful thing about that, he allows people who represent him so you can follow them, as like Paul says, imitate me as I'm imitating Christ. You have people in your life who God say, hey, I have built something up in them. There's something you can glean from that. I need you to imitate them as they imitate me. And then, lo and behold, there's somebody that, hey, see this person? I am building you up. Now they're going to come and follow you as they imitate you as you imitate me.
It's good.
It's always a pass through. It always goes back to Jesus. It's always goes back to God. And so that's why I had to go all the way back to the beginning. If you you have to be hearing from God. If not, you're gonna have so many disappointments, so many different hang-ups, and so many different problems in your friend life, simply because that simple fact that you're not you don't have a friendship and kinship with God first. Like we said, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added to you. If you want good friendships in your life, seek God. If you want to have long-lasting friendships in your life, seek the Father. Like if you want to have deep, meaningful connections with people, first have a deep, meaningful connection with the Father.
Okay, show.
That's it. That's all. I ain't got nothing else to say. I ain't got nothing else to say.
No, well, I mean, I'm not going to say anything better than that. I think we just got to end it there. But I mean, listen to that. You just, all right then, show. All right, take it and run with it. But as always, thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us. Share it with somebody that you think you needs to hear it, and always feel free to hit us up with some questions about friends specifically, or if you disagree with something that we said, let's have a conversation about 100%. it. We have those things, but thanks for sharing. And thanks for sharing your time with us.
Absolutely. We love y'all for real.
For real.
Like, we want y'all to have that deep, meaningful connection with your friends. Like, it's important. We can't do this life alone.
That's right.
It's not meant for us to do it alone. So, this has been Lessons and Blessings.
That's right.
See y'all on the flip.